Ooh, welcome to whatever this is called, the podcast where the takes are hot, the references are dated. I'm Scott Taylor. This here is Mr. Steven Garcia. Steve, how you doing?
Scott, all I really want is some patience, a way to calm the angry voice. How about you, Scott? How are you?
I want to love somebody, and I hear you need somebody to love.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I'm just the
it's
offers.
true.
You don't have to answer now. The offer's on the table. So we've gathered here today to pay our respects to the sacred art of listening to an album all the way through. No skips, no shuffles. Just you, a pair of questionable headphones, and the emotional roller coaster that it's track sequencing done right. Um, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
In the age of playlist and algorithm chaos, we're throwing it back to a simpler time, the 1990s, when albums were meant to be experienced start to finish, preferably in a beanbag chair next to a 5-disc changer and a stack of Columbia House CDs that you still have yet to pay off. These are the albums that got us through gym class trauma, failed hair experiments, and breakups over AOL Instant Messenger. Right? These are the albums we lived on. And here's our personal grouping. It's very personal to each of us. There's so many albums and so many genres out there that, you know, we might hit one or two that you really deeply love, and you're probably going to go, oh, why didn't you bring up these other ones? But these are the ones that kind of hit us looking back on it. Ones that, you might not agree with them all the time, especially my honorable mention that's coming up later. But that's okay. Grab your CD to cassette adapter and let's plug in here. So, Steve, you're a big music guy. You listen and you play. What vibes do you get with music from the 90s?
It was a switch. It was CDs, obviously, kind of came to prominence in the 90s. And it was kind of a time where it was so much easier to listen to a whole album. I mean, I grew up at the tail end of LPs, and then cassettes were the thing. So cassettes, unless you had a really fancy schmancy one, you had to kind of fast forward, or depending on what album you put in. Sometimes I come from the listening to a whole album generation, I think, just because of the fact that you put your tape in and you just let it play. It was so much harder. I mean, you did at times kind of, press fast forward to fast forward a song, but for the most part, you listen to the whole damn thing. So the 90s was kind of an easier time to listen to a whole album. Plus, the music was changing. You got grunge, you had So Long, hair bands, Madonna. Although Madonna still was strong in the 90s, but hair bands, Madonna, the pop music kind of thing gave way to, and I hate this word, grunge, but rock. And
Flannel rock. Let's call it flannel rock.
Flannel rock. Let's do that. And then until the mid 90s was strong. Unless you were in indie rock. Indie rock was throughout the whole 90s. But mainstream rock was like until the mid 90s, and then you had a lot of women coming in. You had Tori Amos. You had let's see, I wrote them down here. You had Tori Amos, Suzanne Vega, Fiona Apple,
Juliana Hatfield.
Yeah, Juliana Hatfield, Annie DeFranco, personal favorite of mine. So yeah, it was a change. It was cool. So I think I'm looking forward to. I don't know how you did it. I did it one for every year, but we don't have to stick to like chronological. We could just jump around if you want. So I'm in. I'm ready. I'm excited.
Nice. Yeah, I did 5 in an honorable mention, but I have a giant list of others to spiel off at the end.
Yeah.
That we either you're gonna name or I'll be naming for the first time. We're gonna be showing a lot of love to these 90s albums.
Yes.
Well, let's kick it off. So, okay, let me throw one at you, and then you can throw a couple at me. So, for my number 5 on here, I had put Fiona Apple Title. Right, I had put. I didn't totally understand it when I first heard it. Right, but I felt it, and it was like stumbling into someone else's pain. And realizing like, oh yeah, I kind of feel that way too sometimes. To me, this was I'm gonna go take a bath and soak music. Right, or I'm going to lose my virginity to this music, right? That I'm in love with my first love, and we're going to take each other's virginities.
Yeah.
It was very moody. The whole album through has its hits there, but before things were a vibe, this album was a vibe.
You said something that kind of hit it on the spot there with a lot of these albums that I listened to or that I could kind of listen to, was that you just maybe you didn't understand it, but you felt it. And that was the thing I think with a lot of these. I didn't go into it thinking, well, there's a couple. I have a Pearl Jam album on here, so I mean,
What? You like Pearl Jam?
but it's a lot of these were just kind of like it was kind of played what's the word, like not directly to you, but like a friend was playing it all the time, and then all of a sudden you just listen to it all the time. So yeah, so you said Fiona Apple, right? So my first one, I guess I'll just pick because I have a bunch.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, the New Radicals. Maybe you've been brainwashed too. Speaking of what I was just talking about, I used to go over to my friend's house in I want to say 98, and we used to play MLB, the game on whatever console it was. The ones that are out now, I can't remember those. But anyways, we were playing this game, and we would just throw albums just to listen, put something on the background. And we put this one on, and then all of a sudden, every time we'd play, we would just we would put it on repeat, so it would just loop. This song has, I don't know what it is. It's poppy. It's kind of ridiculous. It's got a lot of songs on there that are just pure. For me, it's a mix of a little punk rock and pop. I don't know if it's not Green Day-ish. It's just more an R&B, a little R&B, wannabe R&B in there. You had You Get What You Give, that song that was popular, it's played everywhere. But you had the first song, which is Mother, We Just Can't Get Enough. I Hope I Didn't Just Give Away the Ending. So they had these really crazy titles. Gotta Stay High, Someday We'll Know. It was just really soothing and popular, and it didn't really ruffle any feathers. It just kind of was, this is nice. And I think around that time I was looking for more of that because I had spent the 90s kind of that I needed to kind of go back the other way, and just kind of enjoy music as opposed to with me in the 90s. It was music was meant to like, here's who I am. I listen to this and I listen to this and I'm this and it was just nice to kind of listen to music that made me feel good and acknowledge it and just be like, oh, it doesn't have to be mean and angry and doesn't have to have this edge, and it's just nice. So that's my first one.
So you get sucked up into the anger side of it, or angry music, and I get sucked into the I'm so sad and I want love, but I kind of love being out of love more than love.
Well, that was part of it. That was part of the anger, was that no one likes me, or whatever it was, and that was part of it. So I identify with that. There's a couple on here that I have that are like that. So that's a good one though. I like Fiona Apple. I like that.
Well, let's see how you feel about this one here.
Okay.
So this one, I didn't struggle with drug addiction, and that's a big theme of this album, but it's also relayed in like a transferable manner. It ties into romance and heartache, which if you haven't figured it out, that's kind of my jam. But also responsibility and growth. It's loud, it's ragged, it's full of gas station wisdom. Shouted through a busted car stereo, right? It's Everclear, Sparkle, and Fade.
Oh, wow.
From 1995.
Okay. Yeah.
So start to finish, you can throw it on, and there's some not slower stuff, not like ballad stuff, but there's definitely slower tones to it, more sincere tones, and then some of it is just that angsty, raw, I'm angry, I'm coming down, or I'm going up type of songs.
Yeah.
It reached Santa Monica is the classic song from there.
Yeah.
And I dare you to hear that come on the radio and not just sing along with just that just go along with it.
That's
such a good album start to finish.
That is a good album. I think when that came out too, there's a little side note about that album, or about that band actually. I was in this band in the early 2000s, and the guitar player who wrote all the songs and everything had already been signed and went on tour with a band. I forget, My Head. I think that was the name of the band. and they got signed to Capitol, and so they got signed, and they were going to get pushed. And I guess what he was telling me was when you get signed to back in the day, anyways, when you get signed to a label, and there's enough people that like the album at the label, they're going to push that album.
Mhm.
Well, when he got signed, same time that Everclear got signed, or what's the name of the band? Everclear.
Yep, Everclear.
Same band, same time that he got signed, and so they were having a hard time deciding which one, because there was only going to be one that they were going to put all this money into. Well, the guy that signed my friend's band ended up getting fired, so they went with Everclear. So now, anytime when that song was popular, he was like, "Oh my god." It just brought back pain to him. But that was a great album, and I remember listening to that album in my room. I think I had the CD because at that time I worked at the warehouse and we got CDs all the time. Great album, great pick.
And now they're doing AARP commercials and state fairs.
Yeah. Well, they got the legacy tours now too. I think they're going out with somebody. They went out either last summer or this summer.
Yeah, they're like Collective Soul, I think.
Yeah. And so it's like the Gin Blossoms going out with Blues Traveler this summer. It's gonna be good. All right, well here's one of mine. Kind of taps into what you're saying. It was still angsty, and it's still like a voice that kind of gets on your nerves, but it didn't get on mine apparently. And it's about bitterness and being broken up with and heartbreak. And but I loved it. I saw her at the Warfield when it came out. And it's Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill. That one, I was obsessed with that album when that came out. I had to be on the down low about it, but I was obsessed with it. Just because of the things that she was singing about, for me, was the same thing. It's just that she was a woman. That was the only difference. I think she was talking about, they're singing about universal truths, about heartache, breakup, betrayal. I was at that point in my 20s where I was just angsty, just for no reason, Well, I mean, there was reasons, but I mean, whatever. But yeah, Alanis Morissette. A lot of people don't like her. I like her. That album, front to back, there's no fillers, there's no skips. Love it. Love that album. I listen to it back now. It's a little dated, but she's when she sings it now, there's a little more of a kind of like it's like a proud little parent of this thing. So yeah.
And she's also God in Dogma. So I mean,
there you go.
How can go wrong? Choosing God.
Yeah. I had a huge crush on her too. Apparently everybody else did.
Well, I've got number 3 here that was on my list. It's deceptively upbeat. On the surface, it's quirky and melodic, but it's full of longing, regret, failed attempts to say the right thing at the right time, like all of those things. It's Fountains of Wayne, self-titled album, 1996. I love me some Fountains of Wayne. Just their whole catalog, I feel, are start to finish.
What was that? What was the hit off of that album?
Radiation Vibe was the big one that started. It had like a bass guitar line at the beginning to Sink to the Bottom with You. But they had a song in there called Leave the Biker, which is very simple, but it was about, seeing a guy, just this guy that, doesn't deserve the girl he's with. And the song, it's just leave the biker, break his heart. Come over here. Like, he's not appreciating you. Like, but I will. You shouldn't be with him. And that, to me, that hits home. You always feel that when you're kind of longing for that love.
I feel that now when I see certain people. Like, how are you guys together? Yeah.
Their later stuff is great too. I mean, like I said, anything for Fountains of Wayne you can listen to start to finish. But this album was notable.
What are some of the? So you said one, Leave the Biker, and what was the other one you said?
Radiation Vibe was the big one. Vibe. Yep, that was listed in Rolling Stone's top 100 songs of 1996.
Okay,
it was Radiation Vibe. Yeah, it's a tight 12 songs, 36 minutes. So there's no fluff there.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
when you do 36 minutes, 12 songs, you got no space for a meh.
Yeah. Well, that's cool because I did they sing Stacy's Mom or is that another
Hmm.
band? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So later on, they had a Fame with Stacy's Mom.
Hmm.
They had another album called Interstate. Welcome Interstate Managers. That's really good. All their stuff.
Yeah.
The lead singer passed from COVID, I believe.
Oh,
If
that
I
sucks,
remember
dude.
correctly, during
Yeah.
COVID, he was one of the early casualties of it. And I think Bandcamp had uh, like a cover album to fundraise too.
Hmm.
That's really good. I always love cover albums where it's just
Yeah.
bands just
Yeah.
playing other people's stuff in their
Yeah.
own vibe, especially when it's something like that where it's like a charity thing.
Yeah. That's what Alanis Morissette, I think for one of the anniversaries, maybe it's the 20th or something, I can't remember, but she did the whole album acoustically.
Mhm.
And that was pretty cool. I like that one. Well, that's a good pick, dude. They were all over the place in the 90s, I feel like. I never bought any of their albums or really listened to them, but I always heard about them. So you know that that's a
Mhm.
viable band when you don't even listen to them and you still hear about them. So um, let's see. I'm going to go a little spacey here. Um, this was kind of post 90. I didn't hear about him until like maybe 2001. But this album is for me. It's when I feel like I need to not care about stuff. I care about a lot of things. I
Mhm.
care, and it sometimes weighs on my mind, on my heart. This album I put on is to let me kind of relax and not worry about stuff, and that is the 1999 album, "The Soft Bulletin" by the Flaming Lips. There is not, again, no filler.
Mhm.
You may even think of it as an album full of filler because it's not really cohesive in the sense of one song kind of leads into the other, but it does. It somehow makes sense. I don't know what they did. This was kind of their breakout album too. They had a hit song in the 90s, but this was kind of like album that kind of put them on the track that they're on now. Um, and you have Race for the Prize, which I did a cover of, which is no one's ever heard because I'm not putting that out. But I did a cover of that one, all the instruments. The Spider Bite song, he just wrote a song about he saw a spider crawling up on his hand and then it bit him and then it got really infected. And so he just wrote this song called the Spider Bite song. It's great. A spoonful weighs a ton, kind of talking about how small we are, how big and majestic the universe is. And it goes along with the music along with that. It's just great. It's awesome. And then Waiting for Superman. I think Wayne Court wrote this song about a friend of his that died at 10 years old from leukemia, I think it is. So it's just a great album. It's a nice mellow album. It's spacey. You would think of maybe smoking some pot or something. Not that you have to, but it's just that feeling of
Mhm.
that's the kind of feeling I get. So yeah, that's mine. Soft Bulletin, Flaming Lips. Let's go.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, they definitely did reinvent themselves
Yeah.
after one hit, and then
Yeah.
they kind of went underground for a little bit, and then came back out strong.
Yeah, they did a lot of in those early albums, a lot of acid, a lot of pot smoking acid, and they didn't even, they didn't even try to be a band. They were just, oh, this works, and
Mhm.
they want more. Okay, and they just tried to not be liked, and the more they tried that, the more that they got liked. So weird, but yeah, what's yours?
Nice. So for my number two, I went with this is it's weathered, it's airy. It feels like the kind of conversations you'd have, like sitting on a porch swing with a good friend, kind of talking about heartbreak and just life lessons.
There's got to
Uh,
be Evan Dando somewhere in there. Is that it? No.
no, this is
Okay.
not any Lemonheads. This is Tom Petty, Wildflowers,
Oh!
1994. This album, you can throw it on. We're gonna repeat this a lot, front to back. Just let it go. He was the Grammy winner for Best Male Rock Vocal Performance for "You Don't Know How It Feels" that year.
Should have been
Uh,
mine. Yeah.
did you have this on your list?
No,
No.
but I should have.
It's a really good I remember moving out here, and we stayed with my mother-in-law for a little bit, and she had just like a five CD changer, big stereo, and
Yeah.
this album we put in there, and she'd wake up on like Saturday mornings to just turn it on, and it would always just be this album for like a couple months. It was just on repeat. Anytime she came home from work, or got up on Saturday morning, started cleaning up, it was this album, and that was in the 2000s. But I remember listening to it when it came out. I remember DJing, quote unquote DJing, a family Christmas party that we had. And they're like, "Oh, well, you guys DJing?" And that was just us bringing our stereo and picking a CD to put in, right, and just let it
Yeah.
play.
Yeah.
And we had this one, and I remember my friend Danny and I sitting there, and every time in the lead song, he'd go, "Let's smoke another joint." Every time he'd say joint, we'd hit the table to make it jump, to try to make it blur it a little bit.
We can't have that.
Yeah, we can't have this kids here. Just so we could get that little line out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the videos were great. The video from it was great. Solid album from start to finish.
Absolutely.
And
That's
it
a
was
great
his
pick.
second. I think it was his second solo album ever.
Yeah. That album was fantastic. I just watched on Tubi, Running Down a Dream, that documentary.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna miss that guy.
Yeah.
I was a big Petty fan during. Well, it was weird, long story, but I got into him later in the '90s. But I definitely loved his stuff when I heard it. I was a big fan of Damn the Torpedoes back in the '80s. Yeah, that was a great album. Great album.
Mhm.
All right, well, let's see. Let me. I'm gonna go little edgy, little rocking and rolling. This one kind of set the world ablaze for me and gave me and my friends. This is, let's see. It was the reason I picked up music that could be that I had an idea that I could be in a band. And that was the 1990 album Megadeth, Rest in Peace. That one was just a barn burner, first track to last track. Anywhere we were going, we put the tape in, we just cranked it up and just left it in the tape player for like months. I mean, it was just ridiculous how long. Of course, you have Holy Wars, The Punishment Due, which is the song that kicks it off and it just melts your face.
Mhm.
Hangar 18, Tornado Souls, Take No Prisoners. I mean, you just can't find a weak one in the bunch. And it really, Dave Mustaine, who was in Metallica, and then they kicked him out, and has since just made it, I guess, his life mission to just dogpile on them whenever even though they've apologized and they did everything they could to make him feel like he's part of the Metallica family still. He just can't stop bad-mouthing these guys. And he uses that anger and that bitterness, I think, in a lot of his music. Of course, it shows in his face now. He's very, when you hold on to that anger and bitterness, it just takes a toll on your body, too.
Mhm.
But anyways, yeah, that Megadeth, Holy Wars, Punishment Due, Rest in Peace, actually is the name of the album. Fucking barn burner. Loved
Nice.
it. Still listen to it. And it's one of those ones where I listen to it and I remember how I was when I used to love this album. I still love it, but you get older and then you're like, oh man, I was an angry young kid back then. But yeah, great album. What's yours, Scott?
All right, I'm gonna go off my my rogue list here, away from my top five, and I think you might be able to speak to this album too a little bit. I don't know, maybe you have it. I know you picked
Mm-hmm.
one per year, so that could be a little tough. I'm going with "Stranger's Almanac" by Whiskey Town.
Oh, I do have that album. Yes.
Yeah, little Ryan Adams right there, and it's that country emo pop twang
Yeah.
to it, the whole start to finish.
Yeah.
Really heartfelt, really deep lyrics when you dive into them, and it just burns itself into your brain as you're going through.
Now that's the one with 16 days
Mhm.
and yeah, oh man, that 16 days. A couple of favorites of mine off that album, 16 days and Avenues, I think that's
Mhm.
what it's called. Oh, those songs, man.
Yeah, it's
Great
it's
album.
it's solid. It's a solid
Yeah.
album.
And I think, even his first couple of albums, I was a big fan of. I still am a big fan of those albums. He just, I saw an interview with him probably about 10 years ago or so, probably '08, '09, somewhere around there. And he said that the way he writes, why he's so prolific. I mean, because he'll release 3 or 4 albums in a year. And he says the reason he's so prolific is that how he writes songs is that he'll just take a book that he likes, open up to a random page, and take the first line that connects with him, and then he'll write a song around that line and include that line. And I thought that was interesting. So he's very prolific. I mean, he writes all kinds of stuff too. I think he had 2 albums come out in a year, like somewhere in 2010, where it was like a heavy metal album, or his version of heavy metal, and then he had his regular rock album. And so yeah, that dude's pretty good. Yeah, let me match that here, and this is no surprise to anybody that knows me. I think you know it's coming. Pearl Jam versus that, and I have a video that's in the making. I still have to make the last couple of albums on this list, but this is my favorite Pearl Jam album. I think it's better than their first one, 10, which comes in a close second. So, but this one is a burner too. Not a filler song on there. Did you listen to this album at all, Scott?
Yeah, I think I remember going to a used CD store in Somerville, Massachusetts, in Davis Square with my friends, just riding our bike there. There was a comic book and Pokemon, not Pokemon, but Magic the Gathering at the time store right by it. I remember going into the used store and buying a used copy of Versus.
Yeah. I mean, it was great. It was, for me, it was the anthem of my life. I've said this many times and I'll keep saying it. I was an angry kid. And this kind of, I guess, was my anthem album. It was just everything I was angry about, so yeah, love it. Let's see some ones off it. Obviously the singles, Daughter and Rearview Mirror. But then you have like
Rearview Mirror, man. That's just a banger.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about like that, just addressed a big major a point of contention in my life. And that was, I just love that album. So yeah, and he had some, some cool songs in there too, but it was just a nice rocker. So yeah.
I'm going to go back. Most of my stuff is, when I was in high school. So you're talking 94, 97, that range, or slightly after that. That was my key music era. But this one's going a little earlier. We're going to go back to 91 off this list. We're going with Girlfriend by Matthew Sweet.
That was on my list.
Is it on your list?
Well, it was the reason I left it off is because for me, it wasn't an album that I listened all the way through, but I listened to that album a lot. Yeah.
There's, and yeah, I didn't put it on my top 5 because it might be a stretch to go start to finish, but once you're into it, it's like you can just leave it on and you're not going to ignore a song on there while you're listening to it.
Right. That's a great choice, man. I love Matthew Sweet. I met this guy, I think my junior or senior year in high school. I met this guy. I was at home studies at that time, so I didn't have to go to school per se, but I had all my days to kind of just hang out. And I met this one dude who was, I was 16, 17. And he was like in his early 20s, and he took me to this. He's like he knew that I dabbled on guitar a little bit. I didn't really play it all that much at that time, but he took me out in Santa Rosa, and he lived on this like rural farm type of place, and there was this granny unit, and he had a 4-track machine, and he wrote all of his own songs. And he's, "Oh, you want to listen to this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, and we listened to a bunch of his songs, and he goes. I go, "How did you learn how to do this?" He says, "Well, I'm a big Matthew Sweet fan." And he does that a lot. So, and I was like, "Man, I don't know who that is." At that time I didn't. And so, yeah, that was, every time I think of Matthew Sweet, I think of this dude because he had a great voice. It was just, yeah, that's a good album. Good choice. Let's see, man, I think Jesus, there's so many. All right, well, we're gonna go with the flannel music again. And '94 is Super Unknown by Soundgarden.
Hmm.
That again was a barn burner. I think I had mentioned this in an earlier pod. I had a car, I had a nice car, and with a tape deck, and the girls all loved me from a car. And so we would just go to the river during the summers on my day off, and just a picture like four like beautiful blonde or brunette, whatever, just top notch. I had the sunroof open, the windows down, and they're just sitting there like this with their hair going. And I have this song blasting, and I'm like, and I didn't think anything of it until like maybe the second or third time, and they're like, I'm like, how come you guys are like so quiet when we go to the beach? And they're like, well, we can't say anything because you got the damn.
You're like
And I'm like,
the first Uber driver.
yeah, yeah, I was, and so yeah, they didn't hang out with me much after that. But yeah, that album is "Let Me Drown" that kicks it off. It's great. "Mailman," "Super Unknown," the hits, "Black Hole Sun," all those are great. To me, those were they're great, but they were the least great of the album. I mean, it's just, and it's almost too. It's really long, but it's almost like there's two different albums on this, because when you get down to the lower half of this album, it becomes dirty and dirgy and really low tunings. I think they tuned to C on these, and it's just just very dark. And but I love it, so it was great album. How about you, Scott? What do you got next?
I'm going to group a couple things because I feel like some of these have location bias to them, and
Okay.
it ties in with my number one, because growing up in Boston, listening to like local radio, there might be bands on here that people don't know, right?
Yeah,
But that
yeah.
were, and a lot of this stuff too, when I'm coming at it, a lot of it I didn't really listen to until later, past when they first came out, right? Like we're talking like
Hmm.
10 years ago, 20 years ago. So some of the local bands that kind of got me through, there was a band called the Push Stars, that I loved. They were just
Oh, I think I've heard of
upbeat.
them.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
upbeat and just poppy, but there was also that kind of emotional tie into the lyrics, but very upbeat and bop along with.
Well, hey, look, real
Mhm.
quick. This is what I was counting on, because I always feel like I'm more, as much as I was angry and that I was like, I was a very mainstream type of
Mhm.
dude up until like in the last 10 years or so. I always count on Scott Taylor, people listening, to bring out the good local, shop your local, store kind of bands.
I
Go
will
ahead. Keep
I
going.
will tell you, there's so many times that I will put something on and be like, "Oh, remember this?" And my wife's like, "No." It's like her wheelhouse is Green Day, no doubt.
Yeah.
That Bush. I asked her about this, and she's like, "The Bush album that was kind of
Uh-huh.
orange in the cover." I was like, "You mean 16 Stone?" She's like, "I don't remember that song." And I'm like, "No, no, the album was called 16 Stone." But she's like, "Yeah, I just put a CD on, just listen to the whole thing." She's like, I would never skip something. So for her,
Right.
every album is a non front to
Right.
back album. Um, but we'll put something on. She'll be like, I don't remember that. I'll be like,
Yeah.
no, and I can never tell if it's a location bias, because like Local H, Bound for the Floor, right? Like I don't know if that made it out here to California, or how far from
Local
Boston it
H
made it.
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Um,
remember hearing about them. Yeah.
I turned you on to the Sheila Divine,
Hmm.
the New Parade in '99, really
Sheila
awesome.
Divine. I got to get back into that, because I remember I haven't listened to it probably in about 10 years.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that
remember that.
that first album is great. They put out a recent album that's really solid too.
Okay.
There's a band called Tugboat Annie. They're not from Boston. I think they're from New York. But they had an album called The Space Around You, and all their stuff is
Hmm.
great. But
Yeah.
I remember putting that on. This band, I don't know if they were local, so I'm not even gonna say it. This band Orbit, I don't think they were local. They had an album called Libido Speedway.
Yeah, I've heard of
Um,
them. Orbit. Yeah.
so I don't think that they're Boston based, but going to my number one being Boston based, and you know what's coming here. That's what she said. Is my favorite band of all time. This album, "Let Me Come Over" by Buffalo Tom.
Buffalo Tom. I knew that. Yes, I
It
was
came
waiting
out.
for it.
It came out in '92, but I didn't get into them until later. Right, I didn't get into them until Big Red Letter Day, and a little bit later than that. I think Smitten was the album that I got into, and that's when I had like started college.
Yeah.
But definitely a Boston band that kind of spread out. But didn't get as far as you think they would have. They've had some car commercial, song and car commercial, if that's a marker of anything at this point. But they were big in My So-Called Life, the TV show. They were
Yeah.
in that. Jon Stewart was a big fan and had them on his talk show a couple times. So this album it feels like it's like echoing across a dusty New England parking lot, right? You got nowhere else to be. You're just listening to it. The notable song in there was "Taillights Fade," and that was the single from there. Um, but really, I mean, you can't go wrong with Buffalo Tom album. This one for me, start to finish, like I can picture some kind of thing in my life with every song. Not that it happened during that time, but at some point
Mhm.
it just clicked, and my brain was like, "Oh, that makes you think of this." There's a song called Larry that supposedly was about a cat that they had in their apartment. His roommate had the lead singer Bill Janovitz, and it makes me think of my dog Woody. Like for some reason, I tie my dog Woody to that and his passing. So it's lyrically it's great. There's some rockers on there, but then there's a lot of mellow stuff too.
Yeah, you took me to see him at the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco back in the day. I want to
Mhm.
say like '07, '08, somewhere around there. That was yeah, they're a good band, man. And the Sheila Divine, I got to remember that
Chill
because
Divine.
I have it on I think on my iPod that I just rejuvenated. Um, yeah, so okay. I'm going to. I got a couple. I got like I don't know how many more we got. We got an honorable mention and number one, right?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Fuck. Oh, I got so
So
many good ones.
Sophie's choice.
Yeah, I
You're, you're
know.
you're currently holding Macaulay Culkin and Elijah Wood off the edge, and you're choosing which one to pull up.
Okay. I guess my honorable mention is going to be Wilco AM. This is an album I didn't really get into until later in the '90s. It was still the '90s, but this came out in '95. I probably didn't get into it until probably '98,
Mhm.
'97, '98. And once I did, though, it was like a godsend. It's kind of in the same how they marketed it back then was the same as Whiskey Town, which is kind of alt country, but I don't even know what that means really. Alternative country, whatever.
Mhm.
Some of the highlights of this album was Casino Queen, Passenger Side, That's Not the Issue, and Must Be High, which kicks off the album. Casino Queen is my favorite off the album, and it harkens back to I think Petty. I kind of see this as the same as Tom Petty when Tom Petty first came out, although Tom Petty was a little more rock.
Mhm.
But this kind of has that Midwest kind of feeling to it of Midwest rural kind of thing, not necessarily Southern, but open fields, that kind of thing. And these guys came up loving punk rock music, but also loving Hank Williams Jr. and Johnny Cash. So this band was kind of a mix of those two influences, and you can tell right off the bat that that's what this is with a rockin' kind of two guitar attack. Great album. Listen to it front to back. It's great.
Nice. Well, I'm gonna give you an honorable mention, and then I pulled one out that I can do
Okay.
as my top one here, or
Yeah.
my secondary top one to Buffalo Tom, because of course they're the goat for me. So my honorable mention um, for something completely different may seem like it's out of the blue for me. This album was an acid-laced carnival ride through horror, comedy, and total chaos. It
Rob
should
Zombie.
no,
No.
it shouldn't. You can and feel free to guess. You two out there, it shouldn't work, but somehow it flows better than half the serious stuff I've owned. Uh, I probably should have skipped a couple of the tracks for my own mental health here, uh, but we're talking about uh, the Great Malenko by the Insane Clown Posse in 1997.
Oh, great sound. Okay.
So I remember. It was like my first real job working at Toys R Us, and I had a friend named Mo that worked there, and we were both about the same age, and we'd hang out. And for some reason, we got into the Great Insane Clown Posse, and we bought this album. And we just listened to it, and I'll throw it on once in a while now, and be taken back to that time. And lyrically, it's pretty creative. The beats are good. It's widely regarded as the album that pushed them into kind of the cult status. It was pulled from shelves by Disney's owned Hollywood Records the day it was released due to lyrical content, and then they re-released it on Island Records. But it's certified platinum, and it's got the line "I'm back like a vertebrae," and I use that line when I come back plays. I'll say "I'm back like a vertebrae." It's just a fun, weird album.
That is out of left field, man. I didn't expect that to hear that one. That you listened to that one. That's cool though. I like that. I feel like I have to have a number one banger, and I already did my bangers. So, so I'm gonna do two for my number one. So just because I'm so mainstream, it's ridiculous. Let's see. I mean, front to back, my girlfriend got me this album, and we listened to this album front to back, full blast on my stereo system. I should have. Anyways, Dave Matthews Band, Crash, 1996. I was a big fan of their first album, and didn't know that it was one of those things where I saw them at the Warfield at that first album tour. And I don't know if you've ever been in the Warfield. It's kind of a mid-sized. If you're mid-sized to big band, you play. I think it's like a 4,000 seater, 2,000 seater maybe. And thought, okay, cool. That's a cool band. I was into acoustic as a kind of a lead instrument. Up until then, acoustic to me was just Bob Dylan and kind of folksy kind of stuff. And to see a band that kind of mixed in the acoustic with some loud dynamic drums, some fiddle, some horn, and a nice, drummer bass pocket. They were funky, they were rocky. They were a little bit R&B. It was just an amalgamation of all these kind of things that I never knew that could kind of, get mixed together without it being labeled, what did they call it back then? Like kind of, those kind of like country stuff, kind of stuff. And yeah, it was great. And she got this album, didn't know it came out, didn't know that they were still a band. And she got this album and we played this. The drumming, the production on this album is great. Mm-hmm. The drumming on this album is just out of this world. As a lyricist, I'm not a big fan of his lyrics. Mm-hmm. He tends to get a little schmaltzy and kind of trying to fit these grand ideas into kind of the. Sometimes you got to rock out, man. Sometimes. And I bought their first 3 albums, and then I haven't really bought an album since then. But this was kind of the last of their bombastic kind of era, because I think their first album, the first 2 albums, they had all those songs basically for the first 2 years they were a band. They wrote like 50 songs, and so they had this for the first 2 albums they could just pick. Mm-hmm. They wrote a few new ones for the second one, but it was basically all their stuff that they've been playing the last 3 or 4 years. And so it was the last of the kind of bombastic Dave Matthews Band era. Now I feel like it's kind of just, it's a legacy act, but they still write new songs, mm-hmm. but I don't know what songs I don't listen to them at all, but I would love to go see them live. So it's just a weird kind of thing, but yeah, DMB Crash 96.
Have you ever been at a roller skating rink and they ask you what you want them to play and you say Dave Matthews, the deep tracks only, and then they don't, but you still jam to it anyway, like Andy Bernard?
Yeah, I mean, I hear this stuff now and I'm like, but there was something to be said about their playing and their kind of At the time, it was a novel thing to have a acoustic guitar out front. For some reason, maybe in the mainstream it was, but
Mhm.
seeing them live, they had a great energy. I remember seeing them in '96 at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, and that show I was it was the greatest show I think I've ever been to in
Mm.
terms of the experience of it. It was just they had the whole crowd. You know, when a band can control the energy, not just the crowd, but the energy of the crowd. Oh man, fantastic. And it's I had it as a bootleg, and now they have it out as part of their Live Tracks series. If you can pick that up, I guarantee you will enjoy it. Yeah, that's enough said. Yeah.
Nice.
So what do you got?
I'm
Amaze me.
I was very close to getting a Matchbox 20 tattoo in the late 90s.
Oh,
Because I was a
nice.
big fan of Yourself or Someone Like You. So I'm throwing that out
Hmm.
there. But
Okay,
um,
that's cool.
there was also I got into the Goo Goo Dolls. And we've talked about the Goo Goo
Yes.
Dolls and the anniversary of Boy Named Goo. But I'm not going Boy Named Goo. When you think I'm gonna zig, I'm gonna zag here. I'm going with Superstar Car Wash from Goo Goo Dolls
Oh,
from
that's a
1993.
good. Wow.
Uh,
Okay.
it it,
Okay.
it still holds on to some of the hair band era
Uh huh.
to me. That is very poppy rock, but still in that same vein. One of the songs was written with Paul Westerberg. We Are the Normal, and I love me some Paul Westerberg and Replacements.
Yeah, you got
Um,
me into him.
yeah, this album, this is what I got into after Boy Named Goose. I remember Boy Named Goo came out and Name, and it was huge and great. But I remember being on vacation with my parents up in Maine, and we were at some mall somewhere, and there was a record store. And I was going through looking for Goo Goo Doll stuff, and back then you wouldn't have heard the prior stuff, right? You wouldn't,
Right.
unless they had a hit on the radio, you wouldn't have heard anything from it. So you would just buy it blind off the wall. And so I remember that summer, I had pulled that album and bought Superstar Car Wash, and I had my cassette player with me that whole weekend and would listen to this just on repeat. And it's still what I go to if I'm like, yeah, I kind of feel like something poppy, kind of. I'm not
Hmm.
going to go to a Boy Named Goo. I'm going to go to Superstar Car Wash.
That's cool, man. That's cool. I remember listening to that when they got popular in the
Mhm,
mid '90s. I was like, well, what else do they got? Because that's
mhm,
what I like to do, and I think a lot of people do this too. Is like, the mainstream's kind of cool because they'll introduce you to stuff maybe, but when something really hits you, you kind of go, all right, I want to hear their back stuff
mhm.
to see where they've come from. There's a band called the Editors. They're a British band that came out mid 2000s. And the guy has a really deep voice, and his songs are like, let it's just really deep.
Mhm.
And I kind of like that song, and the album was okay. So I was like, well, what are their past like? And they were just pure punk rock. Weird. So yeah, it's kind of cool to go back and listen to a band's older stuff.
Especially
Kind of
stuff
see where they
right
come from.
right before. It's like
Yeah,
what did they tweak from this to this to kind of get
yeah,
mainstream and get enough
yeah.
traction there.
Well, that was the thing with so Soundgarden. I got into them with Bad Motorfinger, which came out I think in '92, '91. I want to say '91. And I heard that album, and I was like, "This is a great album." And so I listened to the album before, which is Louder Than Love, and it was just a hair off from what they did in Bad Motorfinger. And yeah, you're right. You could see the tweaks that they do,
Mhm.
or the evolution of like maybe they didn't get to it in this song, but here's a continuation of kind of that kind of thinking or that kind of train of thought of this song to this song, and so it's kind of cool. It's really cool to do that.
We've talked a little bit about music and the difference between now and then and getting into, we've talked about music videos and how people find new music. Do you remember when in the 90s you could sometimes find like a magazine that also had a CD included with it? And
Oh yeah,
it would
yeah,
have
yeah,
multiple bands on it.
yeah.
It was kinda like now this is what I call music. It was
Right.
that type of thing, but it would be a music
The actual
magazine.
bands.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
you'd have, 10 tracks from bands you haven't heard about and they kinda wrote about in the magazine.
yeah.
And I remember getting those and finding some of these bands that we've talked about, and
Oh,
seeing
wow, that's
seeing that
cool.
early stuff on there or, just one random track, or you've it would be an older copy of it. And you're like, oh, I know them now. And then here's one of their older tracks on one of these
Yeah,
CDs.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's something that you don't get into anymore.
yeah. That's true. I mean, that was such a that was such a like a not lifeline, but that was just such a way to connect people with stuff that maybe they don't normally listen to. I remember we had back before record store days. I don't even know if, but it was some sort of thing at my the last record store when it used to be on 4th Street back in like early 90's. And I went there and they were giving away all this stuff. And one of them was this cassette, and it was called Punk Goes Acoustic or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but all these punk bands that I'd never heard of, they could play all their acoustic hits. And I got a couple hits on that, although I can't remember the bands now because they weren't really, I guess, prominent, but it was just a good way to kind of connect people with, hey, check out this stuff, you know? Yeah. And you're right. Like nowadays, I don't really hear that a lot unless you go to Spotify and you know, curate a playlist and they'll be like, well, if you like this, listen to this. But, you know,
I remember I went into a Newbury Comics because that would be my place walking home from high school to Harvard Square. And almost every day I'd go up to Newbury Comics, just walk around and either buy something or just browse. And
yeah.
I remember hearing them playing a song, and I was like, I think this is a song from The Simpsons. I don't, where would this be? And so I remember I went up and asked, and they're like, oh, it's off this. And it was one of those magazines with an album. It was called This Is Springfield, Not Shelbyville. And it was a bunch of punk rock bands singing Simpsons songs.
Oh, wow.
Along with little clips from the show, you know?
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is the greatest thing ever. And you could find those CDs and those random things and get into all these different bands that you may have never heard of before.
Then we need to bring that back. Oh, well, I need to bring back CD players first, but that's neither here nor there. All right. So my number one. Oh, is that it?
Yeah, I'm good.
That was
Superstar
it?
Car Wash I'll go with.
Okay. Jesus, I just did all of my Hangar 18. Okay. Well, I mean, this is kind of an easy one, I guess. I'm going to go. These guys were kind of pioneers in their genre. They had a death come to them with a band member while they were on tour. Got a new bass player and released a really kick-ass album. And then the follow-up to that kick-ass album, which had no bass in it because they were still just a lot of issues dealing with the loss of their bass player. But they get a new legendary producer, a new up until then they produce their own albums, and this one they release and it just goes worldwide, and everybody calls them a sellout. I don't think so, but it's the 1991 Black Album by Metallica. That one for me was a shift. Not only was it a shift in kind of the way they did things, but I think it was the shift in the way they're not just them, but their audience as well. I remember seeing them on this tour for this album 3 times, and that's how long they toured on this album. And the last was the Guns N' Roses Metallica tour, co-headline, and so a lot of people said that they sold out because they wanted money or whatever. So, Black Album, 91, Metallica. That is mine. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I think we're ready to close the CD tray on this sacred selection of all these albums. They weren't just collections of songs, right? They were maps to high school heartbreak, late night drives with nowhere to go. In the exact moment where we realized music could feel like a best friend who didn't talk back. Whether your top 5 is full of folk poets or face-painted chaos agents, that's the beauty of the 90s, right? There was room for all of it. Melancholy? Check. Power pop? Check. Yep. Clowns? Apparently, yes. So fire up your Discman, slap some AA batteries in there, go revisit an album that you once, you felt like it made your soul feel seen, right? For us, check us out on the socials. Let us know what those are. Tell us what did we miss? Do you remember any of these albums? Were you into ICP? I mean, sure, put it down there that you might get put on a list somewhere, but why not? Whoop, whoop. So we'll respond to comments, list them down there. Find us anywhere on all the social platforms. And we'll be back next time. And until then, you're free to move about the cabin.
See you, Scott.
Goodbye, everybody.